Welcome to Heidi's Family Kitchen. We are going to be making brioche donuts. Who doesn't love donuts? We all do. And everybody is afraid to try and make them at home because there's yeast involved, there's frying involved, but I'm here to show you that you can do it. It's easy and you'll thank me when we're done. To get started, we are going to need is yeast, a little bit of sugar, half a cup of warm milk, 2 whole eggs and 2 yolks, some salt, some flour, some butter. And you're also going to need a mixer and a heavy pot with some cooking oil. So to get started, we are going to put our warm milk in our bowl here, and we're using traditional yeast for this recipe. And for traditional yeast, you want to proof it first to make sure it's viable and just to get it started and bubbly. And you want to make sure that you are using a liquid, either milk or water, that is not above 110, but it's around 105. And this is at 106, and I'm using my amazing Thermopan. It's highly recommend for all of your cooking, meats, baking, all sorts of things. So it's really, really amazing. So I'm gonna put half a cup of warm milk in our big bowl here, and I'm going to stir in 2 tablespoons of sugar, and I'm going to add 1 packet or a scant tablespoon of the traditional yeast. So stir that sugar around, sprinkle the yeast on, give it another little stir, and that's going to sit for 5 minutes, and when it's all bubbly, I'll come back and show you what that's going to look like. Okay, so it's been 5 minutes and our yeast is bubbly and creamy in the bowl here. So we're going to start building our dough. So just going to start with the paddle, and we're going to add our 2 eggs, 2 whole eggs, 2 egg yolks, and our salt. And we're going to add a couple of cups of the flour. So I have about 3 1/4 cups in here, but we're just going to get started with a little bit of the flour, and we're going to mix that up just to start getting a creamy dough. And then what we're going to do is add a little more flour, and then I'll start adding the butter in a piece at a time until all the butter is incorporated. So once I started to add the flour in, I decided it was better to use the paddle to get the butter incorporated. So I added the butter 1 piece at a time and some more flour. And now I'm switching, it's starting to creep up the paddle. So that tells you, just so you know, that it's time to switch to the dough hook then. So off we go with the paddle and on we go with the dough hook. I still have about maybe half a cup of flour left, and we'll decide if we need it or not. So I'm going to continue to mix and add in the flour as we need, and I'll show you what it looks like when we start to keep mixing. So we're ready to go, and I ended up using all 3 1/2 cups of flour for the dough. And I'm going to take it out and show you what it looks like. And of course, I always use my handy dandy Manafer dough bowl scraper. It's not as firm as a bread dough. You want it to be softer, and it's very rich. You can see how yellow and buttery it is. And so I'm just going to give it a quick turn here on the counter. Soft and looks really nice. So what we're going to do now is spray a bowl for rising, and that is going to sit here. I'm going to cover it with plastic, and it's going to sit, it'll probably take a good 2 hours to rise. You'll find that doughs that are enriched with butter and eggs take longer to rise, so don't be worried. Keep it in a warm place, cover it with plastic and a towel, and we're going to leave it for at least 2 hours, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how you shape your donuts. Okay, so we're going to take the dough out now, and the same rule applies to this dough. If you press it with 2 fingers and it stays indented, that you know that it's ready to go. And as I said before, these enriched doughs don't get like giant size. This is doubled, so we're good to go. So what we want to do is shape these, and you have to decide. You can make them in traditional donut shapes, or we can just make like a ball. Some people would fill that with something or just eat them plain. So what I'm going to do is use a cutter and make a round and then cut the donut shape like this. And they have to have time to rise. So we're gonna roll it out, cut them, and I'll show you what you want to do. So just put a little bit of flour on the surface here. This dough is really easy to work with, and we don't want to make it too thin. They're pretty thick in order to get a nice, if you're going to all this trouble, I don't want a little sort of farty thin donut. I like pretty thick. My experiments last week, I found that if you left it thicker, they turned out better. Flour on the counter and use a cutter, and we will cut that. And then we are going to take the smaller cutter and we will cut out of the middle. We'll see how that goes. I haven't used this one, so we'll see. All right, so we're gonna have the holes and the donuts. They're all rolled out now. I would just want to point out a couple of things. These are homemade donuts. They're not all gonna look the same and they're not all gonna be perfect. When you re-roll the scraps, your donuts start to sort of look a little bit different. So you get more layers because you try and knead it back together and it doesn't want to go together the same. But they still taste great. And in fact, Mark's favorite donut the other day was one that was a re-rolled scrap because it had more craggy edges. So you'll see when we fry them up what they look like. And I have some that are just going to be puffy balls. We have the holes, and then we have the donut shapes. So stay tuned and we will fry these up after they rise for probably about 45 minutes. So the donuts have risen for about 40 minutes and they're nice and puffy now. And we are going to get ready to fry. But before we start, I've got the oil going. We want to have it around 350 degrees. And I have a couple of toppings for when they come out. I like cinnamon sugar. Mark wants just plain sugar. So we're going to fry them, put them on here to drain. When they're still hot, put them in the toppings. Let them cool for a little bit and then they're ready to go. So these donuts are going to get fried now. Now the oil is at 350. I'm just going to show you here on the thermometer. There it goes up 350, okay? So we're going to start with a couple of donuts. Maybe do 3 of these large ones to start. And they're going to cook for probably about 1.5 minutes per side. After about a minute, I will flip them over. So I'm going to flip these over. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Don't they look amazing? There we go. So 1 more minute. That's another minute. And you can even tell they're floating nicely. The sizzling has settled down. And it's a really good way you can just tell they're done. So we are just going to take these beauties and put them on a piece of towel. So these donuts are still very warm, but it's a great time to dip them in your topping. And I'm using cinnamon sugar and plain white sugar. So I'll start with the plain white sugar. I just have a little bit in the bowl here. So I'm just tossing it around in the bowl, see? And that's it. And it just, because they're still warm, it just forms a little, you know, that slightly melts the sugar. And then I'll do the cinnamon sugar. And that is that. Now those look amazing, don't you think? Yeah. Okay. And you could definitely make a glaze. I made a glaze the last time with just some icing sugar, some hot water, and some vanilla extract. And you also put that, pour it over, dip them in it, make it quite runny, dip them right in, and let them sit on the rack just like this. And you can have a nice glazed donut too. You could add some maple syrup, Infinite possibilities. Make some chocolate drizzle, lots of ideas, but for today, sugar and cinnamon sugar. We're going to make the donut holes now, and they're little, so they're going to take less time. I'll drop them in. We can probably do them all at once. Okay. So I'll put a timer for a minute right away. Okay, so it's a little less than a minute, and I'm turning these little donut holes over. And they're trickier to turn over because they're little, but there we go. Sometimes they don't like to go over like that. So we always want to remember in between batches to bring the oil back to 350. So we've got this back up to 350. There we go. And we're going to continue on with the frying. So I'm finishing up, the frying's finished, and I'm just putting the sugar on the rest of these donuts. So I want to talk to you a bit about how these look and why. So the first batch that I did are perfect, and you can see that I have these beautifully shaped donuts and holes. These ones are a little bit different, but that's because of the re-rolling process. The rich dough doesn't want to go back together. They're amazing because they are all like layered, almost croissant-like, and they still taste amazing. I was experimenting with making them bigger this time, and I like that. So there we have donuts in Heidi's family kitchen. Perfectly imperfect. They taste amazing. Give it a try at home. Thanks for watching. See you next time.